All right, good evening, yogis, and specifically to the ones in the group, the series Yoga for Spinal Health with myself, Chelsea, and Dr. Ilan and Dr. Laura Solway from Port Elgin Chiropractic and Wellness. So as we spoke yesterday, just a quick kind of synopsis of what we want to remember when it comes to the anatomy of what we're thinking about when we're doing these exercises, and really not just what we're doing when we're doing these exercises, but when we're just aware of our natural movement pattern every day, is this idea of a container, and remembering that it's three-dimensional, that we're thinking about all of the musculature that that connects the spine to the rest of the body. So the respiratory diaphragm, we mentioned that, and its connection points to the spine. The QL, the quadratus lumborum, that connects the bottom ribs to the top of the pelvis. The psoas, so again, a connection point at the spine and into the thigh bone. And the abdominal muscles, so the transverse abdominis, which kind of acts as like this sheath that is the deepest structure of the core. We can think about it as keeping the abdominal contents held in, or the visceral organs rather held in. So if you can kind of wrap your mind around that when you're doing these exercises, and remembering that we want to try to find unification of all of these things. So I'll go through this briefly rather than the 60-minute long session that we did last night. And hopefully this will work for us to be able, so you can do these exercises at home and be able to follow along. So we did use a blanket for a couple of things, knee support, but also for that QL activation, as well as 2 blocks. So just have those or something like that close by. Know that that you can modify as needed. So we'll begin on our backs. And most importantly, this beginning kind of exercise is really imperative to the success of everything and all of these exercises that we do. So finding your 2 front hip bones. And we are trying to palpate or to find that tangible awareness of the TVA, the transverse abdominis. So you're moving slightly inwards, so finding that little divot point. You can still feel the bone structure, but you're slightly inside. And just finding that coordination of breath and contraction. So it's just natural breath work. But your exhale is this understanding of kind of, if you want to imagine drawing your 2 front hip bones closer together. So you want to feel this tightening or this engagement, this gentle tautness coming across the abdomen. And you'll be able to feel that engagement with your finger pads. And this is kind of the basis or the foundation of staying connected to this the whole time. Everything that we do, we want to make a conscious effort to keep this engaged. The front ribs also drawing back. We'll look at that a little bit more closely next week in our session. But understanding that we also want these abdominals turned on and wrapping in. So we're looking for the spine to be neutral. So the pelvis not tilting forwards nor back, the spine not coming into flexion nor extension. There's that small little sliver of your spine where it does peel naturally away from the mat, maintaining that the whole time. So we moved from here into maintaining this, into these toe taps. So lowering down, or heel taps I think we made it rather, lowering down and lifting up, but staying connected to that engagement. And repeating that a few times on each side, and making sure that we really move with this understanding of quality over quantity, and largeness of the movement. So you might just be moving to here. So if you find that you lose connection at this point, head back up and work from that point
until you can gradually lower further down. And making sure, this is a common thing that we'll see, is bending at the knee rather than moving from the hip. And so making sure too that you stretch throughout, that you're connected to that release work and that letting go as well. And we move from there to the option to have the leg extended if that feels like a natural progression for you. And again, if not, really using your own user's manual when it comes to your body, knowing what feels right and what maybe is just not going to feel quite right for you. And it's a lot about creating that awareness and maybe coming back to this body awareness and this self-awareness, and that's where the yoga comes in. Moving from a different mindset and a different perspective, and knowing that place is okay. So we made our way from here onto our sides, I believe. And so my suggestion, and actually I'm going to do this against the wall just so that you can see that I wasn't lying. So my suggestion was to actually move yourself against a wall so that you can find that honesty when it comes to alignment, because we do have a tendency, and I'll maybe show this from this angle, we do have a tendency to kind of roll the hip back or to maybe not realize that we're not quite in alignment. So the wall helps us to just be honest about that. The lower leg can be bent, foot against the wall, shoulder blades and the back of the skull. So you have the option to rest your head as well. So we're lifting to hip height and pausing there. Checking in, your toes are facing forward. So there's a common kind of habit to externally rotate the thigh bone, and then you're rolling, you're loading into the left side SI joint. So just careful that we do check in with that. And even to hold it, it should feel like you're working. And then we lower down about halfway or maybe 3/4 of the way, and lift it back up. And we worked with that breath and movement married together. My suggestion is the exhale on the uplift, but not necessarily, whatever feels organic to you, whatever you can connect better with. And really being cautious and being aware of the movement. So not needing to lift higher, not needing to move quicker. Allow the breath to guide the movement. And then we did a few repetitions of that, and again, quality over quantity. And then we added this little hip circle. And my intention was was to make us understand that there's this tendency to kind of roll the pelvis rather than move the leg bone in the hip socket. And all of this tissue is what's going to create that movement, and while maintaining stability in the low back for our purposes. So you can switch directions, small little circles. And then we lowered down about halfway and we held again. And then we released that. And we took it from there into a figure 4 stretch, or a figure 4 type stretch. But we didn't pick it up. So traditionally we would come maybe into that, but that gets a little bit more into piriformis and the attachment point of the sits bone. So looking here instead to just awaken, maybe stretch out that area that we just fired. So it's just a little pivot from the ankle forwards and back. And then repeat on the other side. From there, we came up and we took our blanket and found table pose. And I do this in almost all of my classes, just as a really good awareness point that we tend to kind of come into table and we tend to kind of think, okay, like, so when's the yoga happening? And just knowing that table can be a really good teaching tool and a really good awareness setting tool, and that to hold table really mindfully, it should feel like we're working. It really should. And we're not talking or dissecting the shoulders, but being aware that your shoulder structure plays a major part in this. And we actually just held this and thought about that engagement through the transverse abdominis. So drawing the two front hip bones together on an exhale, and then releasing on an inhale. Drawing the two front hip bones closer together on an exhale, and releasing on an inhale. And just knowing that structurally we can't actually do that. It's not that they actually get closer together, but it's creating whatever kind of imagery or whatever kind of visual you need to connect to that engagement. So I think yesterday I mentioned like a bridge. So you're thinking about this kind of sagging quality of the bridge, and then everything engages and the bridge gets taut and we can walk across rather than venture across on a really saggy bridge, if that makes sense. And then we offered the option, so after child's pose, stretching out the wrists. I think I mentioned to a few of you options for the wrists to strengthen, and we can talk a little bit more about that next week if you need it. The option, if it felt good for you, to hover the knees and find that same quality. You're going to feel your glutes working as well, which are a component to all of this as well. I just reminded myself of some things, so we'll backtrack a little bit. But so from here, we did come into, this gets into the glute activation and the hamstring activation. Blocks, 1 foot stepped forwards. So we're looking for the knee to track over the ankle. And the cues were to simply, so not be in the flexible type stretch of this, but to be in the more stable stretch of this. So we're still feeling the stretch through the front of the left hip, absolutely, but it's a more active stretch. So cues, press right foot into the earth. And in particular, the 4 major points of the foot. So big toe mound, baby toe mound, back 2 corners of the heel. You might even lift your toe pads up. We have a tendency to clench and to grip, which isn't bad. That there's certain muscle strength that's required there too. But so by pressing into the foot, we're creating this connection to the back line of the leg, and in particular the fold of the glute and where the hamstring attaches to the sits bone. And then at the same time, I cued you to think about the skin of your sacrum drawing towards the earth beneath you. So rather than skin of sacrum going towards or flaring out to the back of your space, drawing it down. And that will result in a deeper sensation of stretch across the front of the left hip, but it's a more active stretch. Good, and then we release that. And swap sides. I do believe we did the hovering table pose there and then swapped sides. And then from here, we did do a little bit of bridge work. From feet hip distance, we started with heels close enough to your bum that your fingertips could touch. So this is providing you with a little bit more stability. As you can see, the ankle is beneath the knee, which just creates more direct alignment, and the bone structure kind of helps to create support there. Arms down beside you. And the cue is to articulate your neutral spine. So that small little portion, little sliver, where it peels from the mat, containment through the front, draw front ribs in, hug lower abdomen in, and then go ahead and lift up, but lifting as a unit. So we'll often tend to think of flexible yoga, so creating mobility and suppleness. So I want us to instead here think about lifting as a unit. And we're not looking for a deep back bend. We're not sourcing out this kind of extension. I want you to think about here, just about a halfway point, a spot that feels comfortable. And see if you can actually soften the bulk tissue of your glutes. So the kind of gluteus maximus that we think of as the glutes. See if you can soften a little bit there. And when we really, really connect to that, we should feel this kind of bullseye engagement through the outer hip. So these are the deeper structures of the glutes, the minimus and the medius. And these play a part in stabilizing the pelvis, which plays a part in the structures of the low back. So you'll want to hold that with ease, maintaining your connection to this, softening this, feeling this. Your hamstrings will likely turn on at some point in the hold. Keep your neck soft, keep your collarbones broad. And then we'll lower down, and any type of stretch that kind of feels like it releases that. And then the next option, if that felt okay for you, is to step your foot 2 or 3 inches forwards, or your feet rather, forwards, so your heels no longer are accessible to your fingers. And then it's that same quality, but we don't have the bone structure of ankle underneath knee to keep us supported. And so articulate that neutrality, that containment, that unification, that container, and then go ahead and lift up. And almost instantly, it's going to be a different sensation. The hamstrings are going to kick in, lifting up. So there's a tendency to think that we really need to stretch our hamstrings, which we absolutely do. But overstretching the hamstrings puts a lot of pressure on the low back and can result in just added aggravation. And we also need to consider that maybe our hamstrings need to be stronger. Often we really think about the quadricep muscles as being the stronger component, and the backs of the thighs need to be more flexible. When in actuality, not that it's the reverse, but we do need to strengthen for sure. So hamstrings will definitely kick in more here, but see if you can still maintain the softness in the glutes, outer hips. And holding it with ease, I'd say anywhere up to a minute to a minute and a half, maybe even 2 minutes. And lowering down. Good. Again, any type of windshield type movement, anything that keeps you connected to this junction point of a lot of things coming together, a lot of things happening, and just creating awareness around that. And we went from here, and this isn't necessarily in the order that we did these things, and this is just to kind of help to give you an idea of where you can go to, connect to the things that work for you. So we did something where we brought the legs up into table. And as mentioned previously, just to hold table from hands and knees is work. To hold table from supine is also an abundant amount of work, if done really, really properly and really, really mindfully. So my lower abdomen is kicking in, which I would assume that I have at least some awareness and some strength there. So no matter how strong you are, no matter how often you practice, there's still this ability to check back in with those little details. And we went from here to placing, let's just go with left hand on quad, right hand behind hamstring. And you're going to just marry breath and movement. So you're going to exhale, resist in both directions. And I think I refer to it as like a tug of war. So you're going to think of trying to keep everything married together at the center. And then inhale to release. And switch the legs, exhale. Inhale to release. Exhale. Inhale to release. Exhale. Good. And you would go with that back and forth a few times. Maybe you go 10 repetitions, 7 to 10 repetitions each side, lowering down. And you have the option there, if you've got a yoga block handy at home, place it between the thighs and just give it a little squeeze. And then you can release it. And then I would go maybe another time through that. And then the last thing I'm going to show you that we referred back to from last night, I'm just going to roll my mat out of the way, is taking a blanket or a towel. And you'll want to open it up so it can fit your torso and your head. And laying down. And we picked both feet up. And we actually just kind of allowed the thighs to rest in. If you want added work, you're going to think about keeping knees over top of hips. But just for now, perhaps maybe connecting just to the movement itself and to the understanding maybe first of the pelvis. So we actually kept the head down as we slid the blanket. Almost like there was a string or an elastic, bringing the right hip closer to the right rib or right side ribs, and then same on the other side. So this is QL. So bottom, so it's slightly posterior, bottom rib to top of pelvis. So we're creating that connection. You'll get the obliques in there as well. So option to stick with that, kind of familiarizing yourself without the added component of lifting the head and the shoulders side to side. Trying not to use momentum, so you can kind of get into a little bit of a groove here, which we'll see a lot of that often. So see if you can use strictly, purely fluid muscle engagement. Fingers can lace if you wish, head and shoulders lift. Head and shoulders lift just a small amount. So it's just a little hover. Your shoulder blades actually remain, so it's more just your upper traps lifting. And it's a little cinch to each side. So there's going to be this desire, and even I have it as I'm doing it, to load into extension, so load into the low back, flare the ribs open. That makes it a lot easier. It doesn't make it more comfortable, but it makes it easier. So see if you can keep everything wrapped in as you do that. So I think I'll leave it with that, and feel welcome to email me. I'm speaking, some other people might see this, but I'm speaking mostly to those of you that are part of the session at MetaWave with, I don't know if I said it, I've rolled this a couple times, so Dr. Elan and Dr. Laura from Port Elgin Chiropractic and Wellness. Feel welcome to shoot an email if you have any questions about any of this that we've done. If you're having difficulties, if there's something coming up for you that you need a little bit of clarification on. And ultimately, this is hopefully creating a little bit of a platform for you to start to work on things on your own at home, and to heal your body, and by way of creating awareness and creating empowerment to understand that we really truly can create this wellness in our own structures. So thank you so much. We'll see you guys next Tuesday at 6:45. Namaste.